You were talking last time about something. I can't remember what I was talking about. You were talking about you brought this thing up about rounding off. That the me, the separate me, always rounds off and rounds things off. Always tries to round things off. So it always thinks it's come to a conclusion, and you called it rounding off and making a full stop.
Yeah. I don't remember, but that sounds like something I might have said. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so true that, and it's just a constant state of it. Like it always thinks it's come to a conclusion, doesn't it?
Yeah, I've had a shit life for the last 30 years, or I've had the best ever life, or it's been like this for 4 months now, or this is the most amazing thing I've ever experienced, or this person is the one for me. And it's always like poof, sticking its flag in as though this is it. I know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just making statements, and then those statements give a veil, give what is a certain colour.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
And in that there can be great ecstasy, but there can also be the opposite to that.
Yeah.
The falling into hell.
When things are good, it rounds off and thinks that's the end.
And thinks, yeah, this is it, this is fantastic, I got there, and then it falls the other way and goes, this is awful, this is the worst thing ever, it's always going to be like this.
And then it thinks it's got there as well, so that's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
Forever, doesn't it? It just thinks that's it forever.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how old you get and how many times you do it.
Like, this is it!
It still does it every single time.
Bless its little cotton socks. And then that disappears.
Yeah.
And the next thing happens. But it veils, it just gives all of this certain colour. It makes it look...
How do you mean it disappears?
Sorry?
How do you mean it disappears?
Well, then that veil just dissolves, and then the next thing happens. And then it rounds off another thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So...
And it tries to make it all stay like that, but it won't, it can't.
Yeah, so it just wants everything to be permanent for some reason.
Yeah, because then impermanent, and then it thinks that having permanence will make it happy. It just believes that making things secure or making things a certain way will make it happy, which is an absolute lie. Life is in life is in love with movement. That's the way this is set up. It loves losing. It loves everything appearing and disappearing. And then it's so in love with it, it creates this opposite dynamic that's trying to hold on to it and plays that game. But it loves appearance, disappearance, because that's the way it is. You get the new car, then the new car gets scratched.
But in every single tiny moment, it's always changing, in fact.
Yeah.
It's always constantly changing.
All things, in a way, there are no things. There are no things, it's all energy just moving. Then there's also this other side where there's no things and nothing's moving. Everything's always reflecting back oneness.
How can that happen? How can you have something that's constantly moving but isn't moving at all?
I know. But it's the actual experience. There's this no-thingness to it all.
But that is really,
This
I don't
emptiness.
know how that, but that's the reality, that it's constantly changing, fluctuating. It never stays still.
No.
But for some reason, the separate entity is addicted to it being permanent, and pretends that it's permanent in every moment. It's really odd. It just pretends that it kind of wants to make it permanent into a structure or something.
Yeah, of course. And then it wants to build it or fix it in some way and move on.
And there's another thing that came to mind. You've talked about time a lot, or that it doesn't exist, and it's also true of the measurement of distance as well. in a strange kind of way, I think.
No, of course. If it's all one thing, there's no distance.
Yeah, so I mean, I've really noticed that if you travel by, you travel by car, and the mind tries to make it a constant again, like a permanence. So it tries to make the time that something takes, a journey takes, the same every time, and the distance, the actual covering of that distance, the same every time, to make it neatly packaged. So supposing you go to the same place, several times, it tries to make it the same experience each time. But if you go there by some other means, like if you go on a bike there or something, it's a completely different experience. Or I'm not quite sure what I'm trying to say, but this is completely different. It's just as unreal as time.
Yeah, spaces as well. And it's all like, what's so cute about it all is if our eyes were to look smaller and smaller and smaller, all the edges would begin to disappear. New edges would form, and then you're getting closer and closer, and then their edges would begin to disappear.
The edges?
Yeah.
Edges of?
Well, if you got a microscope and looked at any of this stuff here, it would then begin to turn into atoms. The more and more you look into anything, the more and more you see that you can't see it start and stop. The closer and closer.
Between one thing and another.
Sorry?
Like the boundary between one thing and another doesn't really exist.
No, it's all the same thing. Then it ultimately comes down to inside of the smallest, tiniest thing is nothing. So it's all ultimately made up of no-thingness. And then it's all these, you go out and out and out and out and out. But it's all made of the same building blocks. And the more you go into it, the less you can find difference.
The more you go into something, in more detail, you mean? In closer?
Yeah. View-wise, I mean. Like sight-wise.
Sight-wise?
Like if you get a microscope.
Yes, there's no edge.
No.
It's just...
It gets smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
It's the same if you get further and further away as well. Everything begins to go into one. It's quite amazing. I've got a really creative mind, so sometimes I must talk utter shit, and it's you just got to follow the imagination a bit.
No, it's really, really wonderful. It really is. It makes so much sense.
Makes sense, and it's not making sense.
Yeah, exactly. It can't possibly make sense. But yeah, further and further away that you look at it as well, that it's just everything merges or something.
Yeah.
It's just...
It's amazing if you look at pictures of the Earth.
Yeah, so, yes. So constant movement as well, just energy moving through things.
Just energy changing from one appearance to another appearance. And there's no solid anything, it's all moving. Even the appearance of the character, that's what I started off with tonight, was talking about how that character's always moving as well. And they seem to have habits, the forms, and they seem to have specific ways of being that form, like the chair's the chair, the carpet's a carpet, a person's a person. But that's not who you are. It's impossible to be who you are. That's movement. And yet it is you at the same time, because it's everything and nothing, but no one fixed thing. The me thinks it's one fixed thing, that it's opinions or descriptions in time or relationships, and that's when all the suffering begins, when life begins to be seen through this filter of me.
It's amazing. That's exactly what I was just about to say, actually. That is the suffering, that things... I have no idea why, but it's because things are fixed.
This is in all spiritual teachings.
Not fixed, but it's entirely artificial.
Yeah.
That idea that things are.
And this is in all spiritual teachings. They all differ so much, but you'll always come back to the one of impermanence, like the whole teaching around impermanence.
Yeah.
Like it's huge in Buddhism, but in all of them. Like whenever you're hearing anyone, and all the different non-duality speakers now, they disagree on so many different things, but it will always come back down to the suffering is the person trying to fix everything. It's fighting.
Make things permanent. Make everything.
It's making things permanent. It's trying to hold on to itself as well. It sees itself as a permanent thing in relationship with permanent things. And then that becomes stuck. It becomes like a board or a piece of plank of wood that then begins to bump into things. Whereas really it's all just fluidness. Everything's just moving and melting one thing to another to another. The me's like a big plank of wood that's trying not to melt.
But it isn't really, is it?
No. Ultimately that's just melting. It's always disappearing in this emptiness right here, right now. It's not really a solid entity. It's always melting. It comes up, I hate this person, why is this happening to me? And then boom. And then there's just, my eyes must look a bit crazy to everyone else. My eyes are following the light patterns on the computer screen. They've gone to light patterns. And I'm following it around, so my eyes must be going a bit funny. But it's all like that light pattern, just watching it now. It's all the lights just slowly changing from one to another, like a rainbow. And then the pictures are changing. The me's trying to sit in the middle of it all and make something solid, and it can't. It's all made of nothingness. It's all made of absolute transparency. It's impossible. It can't become hard. It can't become solid, and it doesn't want to. It ultimately doesn't want to. It just
doesn't want to.
It believes it does. That's it. It's just a belief that's become energetical. I'm transfixed by these lights.
The belief that's become energetical.
Yeah, like it become an energetic expression. Actually, I'm not even sure which comes first, the energetics or the belief. The belief, the energetics. I don't know. I'm not sure if it's the energy that produces the belief or the belief that produces the energy. To me, most probably would think it's an important question because it'll think that it can undo a belief, but it can't.
Yes, that's right. Well, the me thinks it can undo a belief.
But,
is that what it said?
Yeah, like if it's a belief, it would think that's important to know it's a belief because I can undo a belief, but it can't. It is a belief.
It can't because.
How can it do anything? There's no solid person in there.
Yeah. And that's why that entity can't understand when someone does say this.
Yeah, and it's outrageous. And the amount of times that I keep having to repeat, I realise there is nobody in there, there is nobody in there. There's no solid person. There's just appearances. Because it's just like the mind just goes, blub, blub. That's not really for me. Blub, blub.
Yes, yeah.
It's very sweet.
Yeah, so I've heard that, what you've talked about, I've heard it before, but it doesn't. It just falls off. It just bounces off.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It just doesn't penetrate at all. Just bounces off. But yet, there's. I don't really understand is why there's so much excitement about, or so much. There's such a feeling, an energetic feeling about that is true somewhere. There's somewhere there is a. When you were talking about things never having ends, things never having boundaries, solid boundaries, they're always energy moving. There's a knowing of that that's very, is more like a sort of
feeling,
a whoosh or something, a whoosh, like a whoosh of energy. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is like some form of energetical resonance, I think. I don't really know how it's working, but I know that, or there's a memory that pops up of when I was listening to this stuff. It was like, it wasn't an interest in the intellectual. It was like,
yeah, exactly.
It was a feeling that this was so true. It was like the heart could sing at some of the stuff.
Oh, that's so lovely. Yeah.
But
it is. That's such a good description of it. It's the heart singing.
Yeah, it's like everything begins to vibrate. It knows.
Just that right there, you got it.
But it's not the verbal truths as such. It's something far greater, I think, than that. I don't really understand at all, though, in words. But I can feel it. I'm not even sure if I can feel it, but it's like when you look at a painting and you completely know what the painter means, even though it makes no sense.
Yeah, it is like that.
You can completely feel the painting.
completely feel it, yeah. And as soon as you try to analyse why it's gone.
Yeah, yeah.
Look at the picture and
then it just becomes blobs.
Sorry?
It becomes blobs. Or it becomes pictures rather than this intimacy that was there before with it.
Yeah. The way that the separate self, the kind of there appears to be like such a conflict between that and the I don't know, the truth of energy constantly moving.
Yeah.
But it's shocking to the self. It's shocking that things won't just behave themselves, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
it's fighting.
They won't toe the line and just behave themselves and the changing just is so judged that it's wrong, that things change and constantly change. Even someone that you love and you've put them in a box and said that they're that person, and the next day, the next minute they change and they're a completely different shape in the way that they think or the way that they look, or do you know what I mean? So it's like with people and relationships as well, the me wants things to stay the same or be solid, but those relationships constantly fluctuate and change, and someone's completely different at one moment of the day to the next.
Yeah.
Really, in truth, or I don't know whether that's someone, but it's just all the same energy, isn't it? It's just like, it's just.
And this.
It's like ocean. It's just movement.
Yeah, and it is just movement, and that's what happens. Is this person identity that thinks it knows how people should be, how the lover should be, how you should be, how things should be, begins to dissolve or seems to dissolve, and then things just become as they are, and then suddenly someone's an asshole, and then they're not. Yeah. And then it's not even like a psychological working out, or she did that because when she was younger, her mother, blah, 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 blah. It's just then it changes. And then that's it. It's all so innocent. It just disappears. It comes and it goes.
It disappears,
and the mind's fixated on psychology and working it out, and because it thinks that it can do something in that, and that feeds this kind of whole loop that it goes round in of the, the hamster ball of I can get somewhere else in this. And it's that very activity, which is energetical as well, that's stopping everything, or giving the appearance of solidness and uncomfortableness, and stopping things just appearing and disappearing, or seeming to. It's holding on and repeating, and then it gets obsessed with fixing itself, and this becomes a whole new loop of liberating itself, of letting go of the me, and this becomes a whole new loop.
Yes. And it seems to have such a hole, and I probably didn't really make that clear about distance. It strikes me, that the mind, I don't know how to say it really, but it's or it could be just a shape or a thing, apparent thing, that it makes it such a certain shape, but every time we look at it, it's really a different shape.
Yeah.
It's really.
Yeah. It's really funny if you do this to a person's face. If you focus on a different bit of somebody's face, their whole face will begin to change.
Yeah.
It's really funny, that one, especially if you're drunk or on drugs. but you could do it now. If you just begin to focus on the eyes, then the nose might become really big. Or on the lips, and then the rest of the face becomes really small.
Yeah.
It all changes.
So true.
And the colours and the light.
I was hearing Karuna talking about fear, and I really feel for her, actually, because
fear and love are so close together.
They are.
Most awakenings, or a lot of awakenings, are triggered by this huge intensity of fear. Not to make it everyone's going to be like, right, I've got to feel the fear, but they're so close.
What happened to me was and it has happened, it still happens to some extent, is the fear is fear. It's just fear, and then it's fear, and then it's fear, and then suddenly it's something that's not fear, it's just vast. So it's just vast, and vast is the same as fear. I don't know if that makes any sense. So
like vast as it just becomes huge, it becomes everything.
Huge, yes. So you're just, in the end, I've just been in awe of the size of it. Just the sheer size of it, which is the same thing as the fear, but I'm in awe instead of somehow, what's happened is it's turned to being in awe somehow.
Yeah.
Although it doesn't really mean anything. It's just,
no, it doesn't, and it doesn't really help anything.
No, it doesn't help anything, but it's an observation.
Yeah, there's just blah 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 happening.
That's so funny. Like anyone's observing it.
It couldn't be any other way. This is exactly what's meant to be happening and couldn't be anything else. It's nobody controlling any of this. There's no one that's done this. It's energy expressing, and at the moment it's having conversations about fear and awe.
Yeah. It's just energy. Yeah.
I have these lovely experiences on planes. I have vertigo, or the body gets vertigo. So often planes can bring up a tense fear, especially when the plane's turning or when the plane's bumping a lot. But it also, at the same time, simultaneously brings up immense amount of bliss. It's very funny. Because there's no resistance to that fear. It's that hugeness, and huge bliss comes. It's very nice.
Is that a new thing?
No, I've had this for a long time. I fly a lot now, but I've always flown a lot the last 20 years maybe. I used to live in Australia, so that was a lot of flying.
Yeah, while you were there. Or backwards and forwards to there or something.
Yeah.
It's nice. Thank you.
Thank you. It's always lovely to talk with you, Patrick. It feels a lot more energetical today. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I don't know why that is. It does. You're right.
I have no idea what that means or where that goes, but that's what it feels.
It's nice. It's good to say. Yeah, I do know what you're saying. Or something knows what you're saying.
It felt very energetical one time before, I'm just remembering as well.
When was that then?
Really energetical. It was very full on. I think it was like 2 or 3 times ago that I did Ustream. It was when I was in Dorset with the rain.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we're talking about the flood.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah. I don't know. It feels like. I don't know. I'm going to say that. I don't think I was going to say something. I'm not sure I will now. But it's to do with that crumbling. There's something crumbling.
Yeah.
But it isn't. It's just.
As soon as you begin to know it, it stops to crumble.
Yeah.
But energetically, there was something happening. But as soon as we begin to put it into words, it suddenly builds the bricks back up, which is hilariously funny.
Exactly. You feed it straight away. Just constructing, yeah. Just it's quite wonderful actually. Just to feel the edge of that coming in. Just feel, yeah. I'm just doing it again now. Even describing it does it again. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Patrick. You'll laugh when you see this back, because I'm laying down suddenly. So I'm sitting well, you can't see it because you're just listening, but I'm laying down while talking to you.
Good.
All right, Patrick. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye then.
Bye.